I'm going to give you the short 2-minute answer, so if you want to fuck off, you can, and if you want to stick around for how to stick with things and follow through and achieve the things you want to achieve, then you can stick around for that. But we're going to go for a walk and talk about it. So let's whisper into this. The short answer for why I, why you, why any of us quit too soon is because of motivation and what gets in the way of it. Somehow all of the information that we have, the core message that is taught about motivation, about self-discipline, is that motivation and self-discipline are opposites. Motivation, untrustworthy. Self-discipline, trustworthy. Self-discipline, you do it regardless of how you feel. Motivation, whimsy, flips about, changes based on how you're feeling. Now, just as an aside, I am a procrastination coach. A big part of procrastination is motivation. And the information that you're getting here is what I've observed in myself and in others through working with a lot of people on this shit. What I want you to consider is whether it relates to you, whether it explains your experience better than the conventional narrative. If it doesn't, that's fine, leave it. You don't need a narrative that isn't serving you, that isn't giving you something useful. I want you to be a skeptic. I want you to challenge it and test it, but I do want you to test it to see if what I'm saying really plays out. Take this as inspiration for trying to see the world in a slightly different way, trying to see your motivation or your discipline in a slightly different way. But back to the point, motivation and self-discipline do not need to be converse. In fact, my argument is that they're the same thing, essentially. Or rather, self-discipline is a kind of motivation. The definition that I use for motivation is reasons to act. The reasons that we do the things that we do. Self-discipline is, I care about this thing enough that regardless of how I feel in this moment, I still want to push myself to do it. That's still a reason to act. That's still motivation. That's still a drawing on a compulsion, drawing on a something, a source of energy to do the thing. The energy isn't, oh, this is a fun, easy thing to do, but it's still this is meaningful to me. It's just the meaning isn't pleasure. The meaning is some other value, like because it benefits someone you care about, or because you care about determination, you care about pushing, you care about trying. If you don't, however, care about pushing, you care about trying, self-discipline won't be intrinsically compelling. It will only be something you can draw on if there is something bigger, grander, more meaningful to you to move towards, and that is still a reason to act, therefore it is still motivation. Now, there's one other important thing to talk about, which I'm sorry because I've probably gone beyond the 2 minutes that I promised for the short answer. If motivation is reasons to act, then it isn't a flimsy feeling. It's how well you are able to somatically, emotionally access the reasons that you want to do the thing, the compelling reasons you want to do the thing. And motivation stacks, right? Like a little reason could be, I want to, go to the shops because I want a nice meal. But I also want to go to the shops because I want to make that meal for someone I care about. And I also want to go to the shops because I want to get the ingredients for this interesting meal that I thought of that seems like a fun thing to try. There's layers of motivation there. The significant implication of this is that if it's not a flimsy feeling, if it's how well we can access the emotional relationship with our reasons to act, then there must be things that get in the way of us accessing those things. Accessing our motivation, our reasons to act. And if that's the case, then it's far more in our control. So the short answer as to the reason why any of us quit too soon, and I'm just walking around in loops on this rock till I finish this point so I can sit down and get to the meaty stuff. We quit too soon because obstacles get in the way of us being able to access the emotional relationship we have with that thing. We quit too soon because it stops seeming exciting to us, and it stops seeming exciting to us because emotional pains arise. That's the short answer. Now I'm gonna get seated. We want this one. And I will set this down maybe here. Let's see if that is a fitting spot. And taller. That's not comfortable. All right, that seems to have done the job, and hopefully the audio is okay, because otherwise this is a bit fucked already. So the slightly longer answer, and what you can start to do about it so that you don't quit too soon, so you stick with the things that you want to stick with and follow through on the things that you care about and achieve the things you want to achieve. Picture a set of scales. Call them the scales of motivation. On one side we have reasons to act. On the other side, we have obstacles to action. This is a conceptual framework. It's not objective. There are other ways we could think about this. I find this to be a very helpful one. On one side, we have reasons to act, and they stack up on the little plate. On the other side, we have obstacles to action, and they stack up on the little plate. They're not equivalent. Anything on each plate is not equivalent. There are reasons to act that are more compelling than other reasons. The I want a nice meal motivation is probably smaller than the I care about this person and I want to make a nice meal for them motivation. And probably the I want a nice meal for myself is smaller even than there's an interesting meal that I want to make. Like, the interesting meal I want to make is probably a far more compelling motivation than just I'd like some nice food. Because there are other ways to satiate wanting some nice food. It's not necessarily going to be a significant motivator for the specific action that we're talking about. The reason to act on making a nice meal. On the other side, we have obstacles to action, and there are obstacles that are more and less heavy as well. There are light ones that are just minor obstacles, and there are some really big obstacles too. The more reasons to act there are, the more you will tip in the direction of action. The more obstacles to action there are, the more you will tip in the direction of inaction. So we want to either, in order to get the scales to tip towards action, in order to get us to not quit because of obstacles to action, we want to either add weight to the reasons to act side or remove weight from the obstacles to action side. The reasons are always there, but we might not necessarily see them. We might not be thinking about consciously the fact that we're doing this for someone we love. But if we think about the fact that we're doing it for someone we love, if we dwell on that, like, oh, I really want to make them a nice meal. It'd be really satisfying to make them a nice meal. I love them. I want to surprise them. I want to make them feel excited. I want to make something that I know that they're gonna love, like their favorite food or whatever. And it's a challenge, and I like a challenge. I'm a good cook, and I'm not saying I necessarily am, just the hypothetical person. I'm a good cook, and I'm up for a challenge. I'd like to make something I haven't made before. This is like, I have a good reason to do this. This is exciting. Normally, I might not have a good reason to try something new. Like, the obstacle of it being tiring at the end of the day to make a nice meal might be greater than the motivation of I'd like to make something interesting. The effort might be an obstacle that gets in the way of the excitement of making something interesting. But if we dwell on those things that we find compelling, the motivation will grow, the energy will grow, the more we nurture those. If you think about a task, and when you instinctively think about the task, you think, that's unpleasant, that'll be shit. Of course, you're going to feel a bit more shit. I'm not saying you can necessarily get around that completely, but I'm certainly saying that you can reinforce demotivation by thinking negative thoughts about a thing, and you can reinforce motivation by thinking positive thoughts, thinking about the reasons that you want to act on that thing. So we want the scales to tip, and that means we need to either understand what our reasons to act are better so that we can reinforce them, or we need to understand what the obstacles to action are more so we can figure out how to relieve them. So if it is effort at the end of the day, then the thing we might do is just plan the groceries at the beginning of the week when we do have time and energy, such that everything is there in the fridge, because it makes it less effort if we know we're not going to have to go shopping and figure out the things that we need. That might be the obstacle. The obstacle you identified is too much effort because I have to go shopping. And you're getting around the effort piece in some way. You're understanding what is the obstacle, so it doesn't serve as an obstacle to taking action on this thing. I want to give you, though, a more relevant example to specifically the kinds of things we tend to quit too soon. The things that, if we followed through, if we were consistent, would get us where we want to go, would allow us to become successful or achieve the things that we want to achieve. So because I think it's a fairly stark example that most of us will be familiar with, I'm going to use learning languages. So the core points that end up happening in a lot of these things that we try, skills we try to learn, instruments we try to learn, trying to become good at making music would be related, trying to learn to code, make an app, start, whatever project, an entrepreneurial thing, learn to market, career change, any of those things that end up being the kinds of things that can really make our lives dramatically, excitingly different. So let's break down a quick timeline. You start learning a language, it's fun, it's exciting, it's a new novel thing. And usually the way we're learning is quite simple. It's easy and it's accessible, there isn't really a challenge. Which means all that we have is the excitement of the potential of learning language, that big aspirational exciting thing, and the starting stages, starting to get a few little pieces, starting to see things stick, your memory grow. There's that little stage at the beginning. Then you start to transition into, okay, I can see the scale of time that is going to be necessary for me to stick with this thing. And this is probably the most likely place for us to give up learning a language, because it's such a big pain obstacle, such a big obstacle to action. The feeling of, I can only progress so much, the novelty is wearing off, I'm seeing, actually this is going to be hard and repetitive, I'm not just getting the little wins anymore, it's actually going to require me to stick with it. Now I know just enough to see how far I have to go. And that's daunting. How am I going to get there? How long is it going to take? When am I going to reap rewards? When is it going to feel good? When am I going to be able to speak to people? That's where things really start to fall apart. And that's where the motivation tanks, because we're so far away from this thing that we care about, it seems like there's going to be no benefit in the middle. That's a hugely important piece of why we quit too soon. One of the really essential pains that results in us quitting too soon is the thing that we're working on, the piece that we have to do today, the little bit of practice in Duolingo or whatever, is too small relative to the exciting thing in the future. It doesn't really connect us to that thing anymore. It just demoralizes us because, oh, I'm so far away. There's going to be just this grind in the middle until I get there, which is demoralizing and is not fun. And so we need to think about, what is my motivation for being here? What are my reasons to act? How can I alleviate this pain of feeling so distant? Get my hands in the frame, feeling so distant from the thing that I want to get to. One obvious response, I think, we have smaller steps in between that seem aspirational to us. So one thing might be when I can kind of understand most of what someone is saying. I can piece it together. I don't have any confidence in my capacity to respond, but I know I can generally understand most things, and I know enough to be able to ask more questions, and I'm probably a nuisance, but wow, how cool to be able to overhear someone speaking a language and pick up the bits and pieces. That's a step between you and the big goal that feels closer, that feels more possible, that feels more accessible, and you doing the little piece today feels like it's progressing you towards this thing in a more real way because it's so much closer. Even before that, you might have something like, if you are doing a course, a language course, you might have an exam that you want to pass. There's particular criteria for me to tick, specific things for me to learn. That gives us a sense of certainty, a sense of tangibility, solidness to the immediate goal, to the step that we're doing right now, because I know this thing that I'm practicing is necessary for the exam in order for me to pass the exam. We can see and feel the impact of the thing that we're doing now, and that's the really important piece there. We need to feel that the thing we're doing now is impactful towards something meaningful to us at a larger scale. And it can't just be the big aspiration. Like, if you want to be a great painter, you're going to get demoralized really quickly by the fact that you can't achieve the kind of, perfectionism, you can't achieve the kind of thing that is in your head. You can see a vision, perhaps, of what you might like it to look like. You can see what you'd like to imitate. You have inspirations, but you can't copy this thing, no matter how well you try. You can't seem to make it look the way you want it to look, and that is demoralizing. And you can see, wow, I'm so far from being able to paint the way I want to paint. Never mind. Whereas if you have something in between that feels aspirational, that feels accessible, that feels like the thing I'm doing now will contribute to that, then motivation can grow. That helps us alleviate the pain of, wow, I'm so far away, lifts that obstacle, at least to some degree, and adds reason to act in the form of, there's this new compelling thing that I want to work on. We quit too soon because obstacles arise in the way of our motivation. At the beginning of something, it's fun, it's exciting, it's novel, and as you go, it loses the novelty motivation. We no longer have that over this side, and now we have pains starting to arise. If we can navigate the pains and we can reinforce compelling reasons to act, things that are really meaningful to us, there's no reason for us to quit, because we will have sustainable motivation. That's probably enough of a rant. So let me take this. Let's wrap up. There are a bunch more obstacles to action that are worth noting and worth talking about, because just putting words to them and seeing them can make a really big difference in changing them. And excuse me while I try to collapse this tripod while I am still talking, which is probably not the most productive way of doing this. And there's one of these bigger obstacles to action that I want to go over, I think, in a video next week. So subscribe for that. There we go. There's the call to action that I'm supposed to do. So one more very significant obstacle to action. It arises when we commit to habit, to routine, to discipline, to doing something consistently. And it only arises after we have made that commitment. And it ends up replacing our positive, enriching, exciting, meaningful reasons to act. It becomes a reason to act sitting on the scale with no weight. It arises when you commit. It comes like a cuckoo. It comes and sits on the reasons to act side, except that it has no weight. It seems like it should have weight, and it feels like it must have weight, but it doesn't shift the scales down at all. That's what we're going to talk about next week. I want to tease that to see if you can, connect the dots on that at all yourself, because I love to see how these things percolate. And if you want to share your theories or your thoughts on that point or any of the rest of this, please do chuck them in the comments. I will read all of them and I will respond to all of them. But if you take one thing away from this, and I'm going to go this way so the light is better and almost flip over. If you take one thing away from this is ridiculous. Let it be that motivation is reasons to act. And the thing that kills motivation is not just the feeling randomly going away. What kills motivation is obstacles to action. Obstacles, pain obstacles, things that are painful, that get in the way of you doing the thing that you want to do, that make it hard, that make it demoralizing, that make it disappointing, that separate you from the feeling of excitement and an interest and curiosity that make you want to do the thing. Your motivation is not an unreliable, we're in the puddle, it's not an unreliable resource. You don't need to force yourself. You don't need self-discipline. Self-discipline, willpower is a limited neurological resource. You don't need to drive and push constantly. You need to be able to draw on your intrinsic motivation. Oy, fuck. That's what I get for walking backwards. Reinforce your intrinsic motivation. Look at what is causing an obstacle to your action, what's making action painful, so you can relieve that pain, so that it doesn't have to be difficult, overwhelming, exhausting. The motivation is there, the desire is there, and there are obstacles getting in the way of that desire. You don't need to force yourself to get things done. You need to be able to access the intrinsic motivation that is already there, that is compelling you to want to do the thing and want to stick with it. That's really all I have to say. I do hope you will subscribe and stick around for the video next week. I guess the little bell icon as well will mean that you definitely don't miss it. But I'm grateful that you took the time to hang around and hopefully learn something about how motivation works. And I look forward to talking to you about it a lot more, because it's endlessly fascinating to me and I'm never going to stop trying to understand it. I'm going this way if you want to come.